Last time, Sulla was looting the temple precincts and treasuries of Greece. Today, we will follow him as he marches on Rome yet again. The sack of Athens did not end the war against Mithridates. While his force was quite impressive, consisting of 5 legions, or about 30,000 Roman soldiers, and an additional 10,000 allied Greeks, Mithridates' army simply dwarfed these numbers. Depending on which ancient source you read, Mithridates' force was anywhere from 2 to 4 times as large as Sulla's. But what Sulla lacked in numbers, he more than made up for in experience. He and his troops had been consistently at war for the last 5 years in Italy, participating in the social war. After burning Piraeus to the ground, Sulla marched his army to Boeotia, where he met the forces of Mithridates. There, he would fight 2 pitched battles, each one resulting in a devastating defeat for Mithridates. On each battlefield, Sulla erected a trophy. This custom was ancient. It dated back at least to the Bronze Age. The trophy, or tropaeum in Greek, marked where on the battlefield the victorious army turned their opponent's back. This word comes from the Greek word trope, to turn. Sulla used these trophies heavily in his propaganda, putting the image on much of his coins. The message was simple: Sulla delivers victory. As these new victories were being won in Greece, new consular elections were held to replace the now deceased Marius. The winner, and supposed consular colleague of Sulla for that year, would be Lucius Valerius Flaccus. He was tasked with taking 2 legions to engage Mithridates and relieve Sulla from his command of the army. Flaccus came from a powerful political dynasty. His older brother was recently consul in 93 BCE. His cousin was also consul in 100, as well as holding the office of princeps senatus, or leader of the Senate. Flaccus's career was illustrious in its own right. He had held previous governorships in Gaul, Hispania, and Asia. In fact, Flaccus was just the kind of capable leader that you might want to address a political crisis the kind of which Rome was now facing. For example, when Flaccus was faced with handling the credit crisis sweeping the Roman economy of the 80s BCE, his response was nothing short of a masterclass of adroit leadership. The credit crisis began because the most common collateral for Roman loans was land. At the end of the Social War, when lands conquered in the south of Italy were centuriated and entered into the Roman land market all at once, it triggered a steep drop in land values. The Romans were largely ignorant of the laws of supply and demand. They could have obviated this market crash with a council charged with dividing and distributing land, and in fact, the Romans had such a council called the decemviri. Had the Senate permanently impaneled the decemviri and tasked them with apportioning the land to colonists at a slower rate, the market likely would not have crashed at all. But the Romans didn't do any of that, and the market did crash. The steep drop in land values made creditors nervous. Their response was to call in their loans all at once. The result of this crisis was that many new landed citizens strapped for cash were at risk of having their lands recently won now repossessed from them. Had these mass repossessions occurred, surely the result would have been a new round of civil war. Flaccus was able to stop this worst outcome with his legislation, the Lex Valeria de Aere Alieno, or the Valerian Law about debt. The law rebased all loans, allowing debtors to pay 1 ass for each denarius owed. The result was the effective cancellation of 3/4 of everyone's debt. This allowed creditors to collect at least something, and debtors to pay off their loans at drastically reduced rates. The economic scheme worked, and Valerius's actions were praised by the populares and optimates alike. Fresh from this success, it's no surprise that Flaccus was able to win the consulship. Soon after taking office, he departed for Greece. The Senate, short of funds given the many years of war plaguing the state, could only raise enough money to pay for 2 legions. Flaccus took these and crossed the Adriatic, landing in Epirus on the west coast of Greece. The crossing did not go well. One group of his soldiers were sent ahead as scouts. These men became cut off from the other transport ship due to bad weather. Mithridates' Pontic forces found the lone Roman ship and burned it. Many soldiers were lost. The survivors rallied under the command of Lucius Hortensius. Plutarch writes about their struggle for survival. Alla fugon, hosper eritai, lumon kai But in flying from scarcity and famine, as has been said, he was compelled to pursue the danger arising from battle. And furthermore, he was anxious about Hortensius, a bold and capable general, who was leading a force from Thessaly to Sulla, while the barbarians were closely watching for him in the passes. Having encamped there, Hortensius repulsed the enemy by day, and at night descended to Patronus by difficult paths, and made a junction with Sulla, who came to meet him with his army. Sulla's meeting with Hortensius would ensure his victory over Flaccus. Hortensius's men, harassed by the enemy and far from home, immediately sought refuge with Sulla's forces. These men, having changed sides, were now employed in a fight against their real enemy, Mithridates. When the rest of Flaccus's army arrived, Sulla turned and marched his forces north to meet them. He got as far as Thessaly before he had to turn back to deal with another incursion from Mithridates' forces. There, Sulla met them in battle and routed them. This second devastating loss for Mithridates at the Battle of Orchomenus would lead the foreign king to consider a peace deal with the Romans. Sulla opened negotiations with Mithridates and offered him the following terms. He was to withdraw from Asia and Paphlagonia, formally handing control back to the Roman governors there. He was to restore the kingdoms of Bithynia and Cappadocia to their former rulers. He was to pay Sulla war indemnities of 2 or 3 talents of silver. And lastly, Mithridates was to be hailed as rightful king of Pontus and friend of Rome. Many of Sulla's enemies in Rome would accuse him of offering too generous a peace to Mithridates. They argued that he was eager for peace no matter the cost, because he planned on marching his army back to Rome to deal with Cinna and the other Marians. Having accepted all of Sulla's terms, Mithridates headed back to Asia, and Sulla now turned his army to face Flaccus's. Unfortunately for Flaccus and the Roman people, all was not well in the consular camp. Discontent had been brewing ever since half of their force defected to Sulla. His legate, Flavius Fimbria, for unclear reasons, lost confidence in Flaccus's leadership and began to actively undermine it. Flaccus, sensing the danger in Fimbria, replaced him as his quaestor and ordered the man back to Rome. But Fimbria didn't obey these orders. Instead, he stirred up the troops against Flaccus, and they turned on their former commander. Flaccus fled for his life, but Fimbria pursued him relentlessly. Eventually, Fimbria found Flaccus hiding in a well and beheaded him. The army, now leaderless, was in a state of utter disarray. Sulla's intelligence told him as much, and he turned his army against the consular one. When Fimbria received the news that he would soon be facing the might of Sulla's army, he killed himself. Survivors of this disaster fled back to Rome. They reported these events to Gaius Valerius Flaccus, Lucius's brother, who happened to be the governor of Cisalpine Gaul. There's good reason to believe that, in addition to his governorship over Gaul, he held a simultaneous governorship in Hispania as well. These dual governorships meant that Gaius Valerius Flaccus commanded the majority of the Roman army. For now, Gaius Flaccus and his family had been trying to stay above the Marius and Sulla controversy. But they would soon be forced to pick a side. Join me next time as we watch Sulla navigate the coming civil war. I'm Matt Lupu. Thanks for listening.